2015-2019, I chaired the House Committee on Climate Change. And right now, I'm the Deputy Chairman, House Committee on COVID. But in addition to that, I'm the President of Global Legislators Organization on a Balanced Environment, which is GLOBE. And also the Vice President Africa for GLOBE International. I'm also the Chairman Climate Parliament in Nigeria. These are additional roles or responsibilities that one is playing in trying to execute the mandate that one is holding in trust on behalf of those who have used the power of their thumbs to elevate me to this position. Well, thank you very much. You know, the Paris Agreement on climate change is the first, I could say, legally binding kind of agreement on the entire world, on all the countries that signed up to it, on how to work to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in a way, you know, not to go beyond 2 degrees Celsius. Because right now, even when we are saying we are within 1.3, 1.4, you can see that the heat, every system is almost falling apart. If you listen to CNN or some other reports yesterday, I'm sure you would have noticed that the Arctic region has lost significant bunch of the ice, you know, stretching into hundreds of kilometers of miles. These are not good signs. These are signs they reacted to excess heat. So this is a deliberate, the Paris Agreement is a deliberate effort by the world to checkmate the disaster that will surely happen unless we reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So that's what happened, and that's why the world gathered, you know, in 2015 in Paris. And of course, I want to give credit to Mr. President, because that was just very few months after he assumed office as the President of the Federal Republic, and he was able to attend that meeting and made his contributions. So as a follow-up to that meeting, talking about now when he signed the Paris Agreement, as a follow-up to that meeting, countries were required to sign, you know, the Paris Agreement on climate change the following year, because that meeting happened in December. So we, Mr. President, signed the Paris Agreement on climate change on the 22nd of September 2016 at the United Nations headquarters. And since then, he has not looked back, because apart from attending the meeting, apart from Mr. President attending the meeting in Paris in that 2015, and then signing the Paris Agreement September 22nd, 2016, then in November, December of 2016, he was also there at Marrakesh. You know, he has attended several of these, you know, climate change related conferences. And fortunately, some of us were lucky to be part of these meetings. So it shows commitment, and it shows that he understands the impact of climate change on the country and also on the continent, and of course by extension the entire world. I know we do not generate a lot of emissions. Our contributions are maybe around 4 or no more than 4% of the general emissions, but we suffered in part. We are much more vulnerable because we have not prepared ourselves for some of the challenges coming, and therefore it is important that we key in early. And that's why I think I will again commend Mr. President. Why? Because in his inaugural address on the 29th of May 2015, he did say that he was going to tackle the challenge of menace of climate change, and has truly demonstrated that. In 2021, May 5th to be precise, I delivered a paper at the Scottish Parliament, you know, talking about, NDCs, net zero, and steps that are being taken by different nations. And I spoke specifically about Nigeria. Yes, I talked about the Sahel region. I refer to it as a Sahel challenge. And the Sahel challenge is real. If you look around the Sahel region, which cuts across almost the entire African continent, the whole area is so badly devastated. And it's so because of the impact of climate change. Because as we are talking about the heat and the weather and the change, the Sahara Desert, all these things come with desertification and drought and total degradation of the environment of the land, such that what you are seeing is dust only. So in such a situation, you can no longer farm. You cannot even live because it is so hot. From that challenge now, as it affects Nigeria, you've seen people, you see a lot of ungoverned spaces being taken over by bandits, criminals, because there's nobody to report on their activities. They even do trainings on how they're going to attack and no one to check them. So it has really come down, cascaded down to this part. Now, we are living with serious security challenges. We talk about herdsmen. They have nowhere to graze their cattle. Why? Because the area has turned into dust. That wasn't the case, a few decades back. You talk about Lake Chad. You can see that Lake Chad has shrunk from what it was in the 60s, in the early 70s, which was about 25,000 square kilometers. So something now that is less. Initially, we used to say it's about 2,500, but the recent studies revealed that it has shrunk to well below 1,300. Okay, so that's the impact. And so what's the consequence of that on those who are living around the area? Now, individuals who previously depended on the lake for means of livelihood, either through animal husbandry or through fishing or agriculture or any other thing that they were doing around there. Most of these individuals had only ordinary skills of grazing, animal husbandry, farming, fishing. But now they've been thrown into the cities because the area where they used to find their means of livelihood is gone. For them to be in the cities in millions, they are ready to do anything to survive. That is what is significantly responsible for the kind of the security challenge that we have had from the northeast, and gradually the thing has spread. So that was why I highlighted the issue of the Sahel challenge and how you mix it up with problems coming from climate change. And I'm happy that the AU is aware of that, and in fact our president is now the president of the Great Green Wall today, and the secretariat has moved to Nigeria. So that what we stand to gain is huge, it's immense. You cannot even quantify it. Because if you want to come from the angle of building a green, sustainable economy to make sure that we have life in abundance, we talked about the heat, we talked about the challenge that's coming from the Sahara, we talked about how we are losing Lake Chad, we talked about how this is bringing security, serious security implications. That's, if you can eliminate such challenges, life will be a lot more better for us. That's one point. Then the other one is that this is intended to ensure that we don't go through the kind of things where, for instance, look at what is happening in Rivers State, where soot that's coming from improper refining of fuel has affected many lives. But when it was happening, it appeared innocuous because it was not hitting somebody and you die immediately. It seemed like nothing was happening. But over time, it's been found out that it was affecting both pregnant women, ordinary people, blocking their lungs and creating serious health challenges. So the act makes provision for tackling such a thing, making it an offense in section 34. If you do things that have the potential to create serious climate problems, you are charged, you are guilty. So that is that. Then you talk about the fact that everything about tackling the menace, devastating effect of climate change will now be handled at the level of a National Council on Climate Change to be chaired by Mr. President. So you'll be able now to formulate policies and have them properly coordinated without MDAs or agencies working in silos or, you know, in everyone operating in your own area. That is one of the benefits it's going to bring. So they'll be able to get results. So that is one advantage, that policies will be formulated, properly coordinated, and monitored. Why? Because the man who appointed almost everyone to that position will always preside over the meetings and ask for reports. So that will benefit the nation. 2, this bill provides for something like making sure we have a director in most of the MDAs on climate change. That's provided for in section 22. You find that right now, if you tell people about climate change, if not for the increased interest, they'll just like, it's okay, what's it talking about? So, but now it has become obvious that this is something that is worrying the world and it must be addressed. So the Act now makes a provision for a director on climate change to be appointed in the MDAs so as to be able to achieve what we call green budget, meaning he will be able to prepare what he thinks his ministry or department requires to be able to tackle some of those challenges, and then put that in the budget and pass on to the PAMSEC so that it's included in the appropriation. Today, that is not being done, because when I chair the committee, I know the challenges that we faced. Very many people did not want to touch anything, called or referred to as climate change, but they were not including in their budget. So this bill is deliberate. That section is a deliberate section. It was born out of experience. Okay, you also have, you're talking about the carbon budget, you're talking about how to check, make sure that we are monitoring the emissions. That's a provision in section 19. So this bill has a whole lot. This bill also has a provision on nature-based solutions. I just talked about the Great Green Wall. I'm also going to talk about what we call REDD+. That one, we are talking about reducing emissions from degradation and forest, and deforestation. So all these things are things that lead to the negative or devastating effects of climate change. We also have a section that deals with, natural capital accounting, which is to say that you must recognize something like the forest, the seas, and what you have there when you are preparing your GDP. Because if you know that they add to your GDP and that they help to capture, what you have in your nation, then you will preserve them and now recognize them as you are preparing your annual GDP. But today, that's not exactly what is happening. That was why the UN in April last year came out with, a declaration that these things should be captured. And I can tell you that we have it in this act. So this act is almost, I would not say it's all embracing. No act is, but to a significant extent, it covers a wide range of issues that have to deal with human beings. So it's a bill that is very huge. And that's why we're looking forward to Mr. President inaugurating the National Council on Climate Change, because there's a time frame. Within 1 year, there's supposed to be a budget. As soon as that bill is accepted, time has started counting from the 18th of November last year. So we're looking forward to the council being inaugurated so that we do not fall foul of our own law. This bill suffered a setback in the 6th Assembly. It suffered another setback in the 7th Assembly. And when I chaired the House Committee on Climate Change in the 8th Assembly, that was when I sponsored the bill. it also suffered a setback in my very before. On the challenges that I faced, I can tell you there were many and varied. So the challenges were many, and they were actually very complicated. That's what I'm trying to convey. One was that before now, there was serious challenge from the bureaucracy. Those who were used to working on issues of climate change quietly, without letting everybody know that there is something they are doing there. So they didn't want an act that will bring the activities under scrutiny. They prefer to operate in silos. So at every point where you pushed a bill, they found ways to successfully kill the bill after it was passed. In fact, this act now, after it was passed, there was a spirited effort to make sure that it did not get assent. But Mr. President, having made a promise to the Nigerian people, as far back as May 29th, 2015, just went ahead and assented to the bill. Having also realized that the world is moving, the world is transiting rapidly. So the challenges came from the bureaucracy, who always found reasons to stop the bill from crossing the finish line. But the most destructive was the one that came from individuals superintending over issues of climate change, who were accessing maybe resources one way or the other, which they didn't want to come to limelight, and they didn't want to come under scrutiny. And then they looked for a way and they were in strategic positions. So anything you did about the bill, they wait till the last minute and they'll strike. There were lots of challenges. I recall someone coming here, a particular ministry, coming with a letter to say they were opposed to the bill. And on the day we had public hearing in the 8th Assembly, that they came here to oppose the bill. A letter signed by a minister. So these were experiences, very troubling ones. But we give God all the glory that Mr. President Muhammadu Buhari, GCFR, saw through this. And in this 9th Assembly, he assented to it. At the same time, I would like to commend the Speaker of the House of Representatives, His Excellency Right Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila, because when he saw, I'm not sharing climate change now, but when he saw how, he calls me Doggy Honorable, when he saw how determined I was on this thing, he truly, totally came on board and asked me if there was anything he needed to do. And a few things I pointed out should be done. He supported. The same way, the Minister of State Environment, she was all out, ensuring that we received all the support. And I'm happy that this has happened while she is still there. She gave us immense support. We got similar support from the Minister, the Attorney General and Minister of Justice, Abubakar Malami, SAN. He nominated people who work with us in trying to redraft, do a review, to make sure that meets the standard. So you can see, as I said before, that you need support from the executive and then to cross the line. And sometimes you also get resistance from the executive, because if the bill had not been assented to by Mr. President that time, or they had a reason, it was going to be difficult to get it back on board, maybe until the next assembly. So there were a series of problems and varied challenges.